So we meet again, Trebek. Sorry. Good evening to you. It is Wednesday, April 17th at 8:11 p.m. You may not have not had it on your schedule that there was going to be a QuickCast today, and you may not even thought about watching something live. Maybe it's streaming for you right now live, or maybe you're watching this on delay. Regardless, something struck me about a day ago. It was kind of eating at me, and I thought I needed to put it here so we could discuss a little bit. Before I get into discussion, let me give my final thanks of the year to our two excellent partners this season. Thank you to our friends at AJ's. If you go over to eatajs.com, you can order ahead. But if you're there, you can enjoy great service and really great food. Adam and Jake, thank you for a fantastic year together. If you don't know this, our partnerships with our sponsors pretty much end in March. And they've been great this year. Both of them have. And I just want to say thanks again to Adam and Jake and the great staff at AJ's. If you're on campus, head towards the fire station. Then you'll get there. AJ's on Vine, burgers, beef, and beer. Also, when you're in the market for a retro Purdue t-shirt, or maybe an FDU shirt, or maybe another school that has captured your fancy because maybe one of your kids or your buddy or somebody goes to another school and you just like their colors, whatever. Head over to Homefield Apparel. When you go there, put something in your basket, a new sweatshirt, a hat, a t-shirt, a jacket, jersey. They've got jerseys too. Enter Boiled 23 at checkout, you get 15% off, but I believe it might be over now. They had a brief sale where things were 30% off with their code. That's over now, but the Boiled 23, I believe, is still going. But thanks to Homefield Apparel all season, thanks to Connor and company. They make great stuff, really, really good looking stuff too. So let me tell you, I had this thought, and you can tell me what you think. Obviously, you saw the title. An ode to Fairleigh Dickinson, an ode to FDU, an ode to the darkest day of many of our Purdue fandom lives ever, right? It's a day that was marked when it happened. If you go back and you look at my thoughts, you look back at that video, it was something that I felt like I had to do because I had consistently come to you guys and talked after every game last season in 22-23. And I felt like I got to go on while it's still kind of fresh and just talk a little bit about what I was thinking and what the experience was on this end and what I saw and why it happened. But let's look back at it for a second, okay? It's St. Patrick's Day 2023. Purdue loses just a 5-point loss in the NCAA tournament. If you just say that by itself, we've been through worse as Purdue fans. If you're an older Purdue fan, you can remember losing to Kansas State. You can remember losing to Duke. You can remember, trying to think of another one, losing to Stanford. There's been a lot of painful losses for Purdue fans in the NCAA tournament. But this one was special. Purdue was a number 1 seed. And they lost to the worst team in the NCAA tournament. And not only did they lose to them, they lost to them in a way that it felt like pretty desperate, especially down towards the end, that they weren't going to get there. Hell, Purdue had lost a pretty painful game to North Texas and another game to St. Peter's that hurt. But this one was worse. It felt worse. It was like a punch in the gut or a getting stabbed, whatever you want to say it. It hurt. It stung really badly. From that game, you had a lot happen in the wake, right? It's easy for us to look back after a year and a couple weeks later and have perspective on it and say, you know what? The loss was worth it. But at that time, and even for months and months and months, it wasn't at all worth it. And it felt like some of the worst pain as a fan you can deal with, especially in the social media era where you constantly get reminded about things like that. Trying to defend your favorite team when that happens is difficult. Trying to ignore the chatter is difficult. Now, for a second, think about the perspective of those players and those coaches. These are people. They also have social media accounts. Some of them are pretty active on there. I think of guys like PJ Thompson, who's a coach. He heard it. He heard it loud and clear. Zach Edey, who's pretty active on social media, heard it. Fletch Lawyer, Braden Smith. These guys heard it. They heard it at a level that you didn't hear it. They heard it and they felt it. And not only was it a questioning of their abilities, it was a question of their character. It was a questioning of their manhood in some ways, how tough they were. Because if you looked at it on paper, there's no way in hell that Purdue team should have ever lost to FDU. But FDU was ready. Their coach was ready. He was confident coming in. And then he backed up his confidence with a win. From that day, we got a couple things, right? We got remember Paint saying the phrase, got to sit in it. Got to sit in it. And if you're a parent, you know what that means, right? If you're a parent, you've had a kid that you've changed a diaper a little bit late, where it's sat around a little long. Maybe it didn't smell the dirty diaper. But when you got there, that poor kid had diaper rash. They had sat in a stinking mess, and it was bad for the kid. They were in pain. There was crying. There was a horrible smell. The idea of sitting in it that Painter coined and that Purdue didn't run from was so apt, and he kept going with it. He beat that drum because he said, you know what, we're not going to run from the facts of the matter. Purdue lost a game they shouldn't have lost, and they lost it on a big stage, and everybody in the sports world that cared at all, and even some that didn't care, people that were in office NCAA pools, they saw it. They took notice of what Purdue was and what they had done and how it was nearly unprecedented. I read in the comments after the national championship, someone said, I would have loved to have had a bracket buster of sorts in the championship. But instead, Purdue got a absolute mother in UConn this year, right? Virginia, after they lost their 16, they had a series of extremely fortunate events or lucky events, or they took advantage of situations, whatever you want to say. Purdue was in the way of one of those fortunate, lucky, skillfully crafted events that led to them putting their number 16 loss the year before to bed with a national championship. That's an amazing turnaround, amazing swing. Their road was much different than Purdue's. Purdue went through absolute mothers on the road to their national championship game. And it's still, I got to tell you, saying the words that Purdue went to a national championship. Like I said, this is a new world we're in. We're in a new era for Purdue basketball and Purdue sports. What has that done to Purdue, we'll know later. And we can look back on this date. We can look back on this April. Purdue played games in April, multiple games in April. That's a new thing too. But we'll look back on this championship and either we'll say, wow, what a fun run. That was an amazing thing. It was a one-time thing. Or was it something that changed culture? We'll talk about that a little bit here in a minute. Something that I've been thinking about a lot, whether it's Purdue basketball or somebody else, is a quote that I've heard a long time ago. I don't know who it's credited to, but it's a great quote in this case. The idea of don't let something good stand in the way of greatness. And Purdue has always been good, always been solid at basketball my entire life, with a couple little downturns, has been very good. Very, very good at times, right? At times, you'd say, okay, that looks like a team that could win the national championship. And maybe in hindsight, you said, they were pretty flawed. Maybe they couldn't have done it. Obviously, they bowed out early. They didn't get to the Final Four because Purdue hadn't done that since 1980, and I didn't remember any of those. I didn't remember 1980. Obviously, I wasn't alive in 1969. But this year's team was a different animal because you looked at this year's team and you said, that's one of the best teams in America. And so when they got to the Final Four, all of a sudden you said, like Fletch Lawyer, two more. Go win two more games. And they did their job versus NC State, and they came up short versus UConn, the best team in America, clearly. A team that was on another level. A team that, regardless what you think of the NIL, they really took advantage of the NIL and the new era we're in. They went out and they spent money, and they got players that were absolute dudes, especially in that backcourt. Man, even their front court too. Complete team, great team, well-coached team, absolute lunatic jackass as a coach. But they ran into the best team in America, and they lost. And they earned the loss because that team was better. But the one thing we know, and the one thing we've learned from FDU, is that no loss is in a vacuum, or no loss. Yeah, no loss in a vacuum. No, nothing's by itself. Everything affects everything else. And in the past, we've said, okay, generally, what did that loss teach those players? What did it do to the program? What's the fallout of that loss? Generally, loss in the middle of the season, you can see within a couple of weeks or a month the lessons that were learned or not heeded. Last year, going back to 22, 23, we'd see the same mistakes happening over and over, and the team didn't seem to get it. They didn't seem to click. And part of that was because they just didn't have the ability to do the next thing that they needed to do, right? They didn't have the personnel to say, okay, we need to take a next step in this part of the game. We don't have the talent to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to lose that way again. If you have a bunch of ball-dominant guards, Purdue would have a hard time beating that team if they got hot that day. Well, this year, until they ran into UConn, there was almost no one that could truly match up with Purdue when they were playing the right game, playing the right way. I'm convinced, I said this before, I'm convinced that Purdue couldn't beat UConn more than 2 or 3 times if they played them 10 times. I think UConn's that much better. But what does this loss to UConn teach Purdue going forward? Just like FDU taught Purdue something, what does the loss to UConn do to Purdue basketball? What does going to a Final Four do for the program, the fan base, individual players? What does it do to Braden Smith? Well, there's rumors going around that Braden Smith took about 2-3 days off. He went and enjoyed Zach Edey's second National Player of the Year in a row, and he got back to work, and he's been practicing and working on his game. What's it do to Fletch Lawyer? What's it do to TKR? What's it do to Heidi? What's it do to Colvin? What's it do to other guys that are on that bench? We already know Purdue doesn't have room next year, doesn't have enough scholarships for Mason Gillis and Ethan Morton. And those are big losses because those are guys that have sold out for the program. But they knew about this months ago that there wasn't a spot for him on the roster. And it absolutely sucks to me to think about these guys playing in a uniform other than a Purdue uniform. I think after this year is over, so we'll look again, fast forward a year from now, and we'll say these guys are still Boilermakers, and they're going to come back. You're going to see that. You're going to see them in Mackey Arena. Purdue's their home. Regardless of what happens after this with, let's say if Gillis lands at one of the places I really don't want him to land, but there's rumors going around he could land at a place that I disdain, and he goes there for the exposure and to play with that team. They need his toughness, by the way. A lot of teams need Mason Gillis's toughness. But if he goes there and they have a good season, he's still going to be a Boilermaker. I think Purdue fans are not going to disregard what we know about Mason Gillis and Ethan Morton. I hope and pray these guys end up playing for ex-Purdue coaches. Shrewsbury and Lutz are both available. You've got Notre Dame and Oklahoma State. And, of course, you've got Conzo Martin's team, Conzo Martin has 2 Purdue Boilermakers on his bench now. You've got some really neat things happening with the Matt Painter coaching tree. This tree is getting rooted. It's growing. It's really neat to see. Hopefully, it isn't just Coach Lutz and Coach Shrewsbury that are successful in a couple years. Hopefully, in a couple years, we look and we say, wow, this model was replicatable. These branches got strong. These roots got strong. And Painter's bench continues to be a place that attracts great talent because he sends those guys out without fear of what it does to his bench, but instead with confidence of what it does for those individuals. That's an amazing way for a leader to lead. But what did this loss to UConn do to Matt Painter? We don't know right now. We really don't know. Did it make him say, you know what? That was pretty great. I'm now among the elite coaches and buy into some of the things we've been talking about. Or did it make him say, you know what? I want to get back there. I want that stage again for multiple reasons. But one of the big ones is I got to tell the story that I've wanted to tell because the media put mics in my face and I went out there and I honestly answered questions that were bigger than just about this last opponent or this next opponent. They were about college basketball up high, that 30,000-foot view. Painter was brilliant. I've said it over and over. What does this going to the Final Four and then losing the championship do to Purdue? We won't know for a couple years. But right now, we know It's not great to lose in a championship, but it's pretty great to go to a championship. And I've seen some weak trash talk on Twitter. Some of it's been directed at me because Boiled Sports is, where I tweet from. It's going to be pretty tough to knock me off the perch that I feel right now. I'm pretty damn happy to have been to an Elite Eight game that Purdue won for first part. And the second part is getting to that championship. Surreal for me. Surreal. To see Purdue on the Final Four building, the stadium, to see the banners up in that place, to see the graphics all about Purdue, to see the pregame production, including my Boilermakers. It's stuff like I dreamt about when I was a little kid because I just love Purdue. And seeing it was incredible. Now, as we're in the midst of Purdue not going through a rebuild, but a retool, there might be some growing pains along the way. Other teams are buying players, buying that, and I think this is the future, obviously, of college basketball. I hope Purdue can hang on as long as they can with the model they've got, which is go get guys that really want to be Boilermakers, who want the education, want the heritage, want to play for Painter, want to do things in a way that Purdue does them, which is not common, and it is not normal, and it's becoming less and less normal in this era. But we'll see how long this business model works for Purdue. Let's see. So after last year, obviously, Purdue loses Newman to transfer, and Jenkins graduates this year. There's some parallels. Purdue loses the best player ever in program history, and they lose Jones, one of the greatest grad transfers we've ever had at Purdue, if not the very best grad transfer. You guys can discuss that and argue that if you want. There obviously are a couple other candidates you can put out there, but definitely Jones. One thing I heard some players talking about is the importance of having Jones on your team. I heard P.J. Thompson talking about this, that before big games, something you may not have known, Jones would start texting players, and specifically he would text Zach Edey and tell him, hey man, nobody's better than you. You're made for this situation. Go out and take what's yours. Love playing with you. You're a great teammate. Just all these positive, affirming things. So you saw the affirmation, the smile on Lance Jones' face when he played. You saw the guy not grip and get too nervous and on a big stage. And now you hear about things of how good of a teammate he was to these Boilermakers, how much of a complimentary piece he was for these Boilermakers. Now, the grad transfer, I think, is something that Painter is going to keep close to him. When he needs a player and there's a roster spot open, he's going to go get these guys. I think that he has no problem with getting grad transfers. And, as we've seen, he has no problem with letting guys go if they've been here for 5 years. I think he sees that as different because he thinks, okay, college is this many years. These guys have done their job. They've been good warriors for the program and for the program they came for, and I have no problem welcoming these guys in out of this program or letting my guys go and do something new. It's clear that's his philosophy. I've never heard him vocalize it. Maybe we will in the near future. But I don't know how long Purdue can keep away from the mercenary model. One thing we saw last year, in the wake of that FDU loss. One really, really good byproduct we saw in the wake of that FDU loss is we saw Purdue's collective rise to the occasion. That means people like you who give money to the collective. I can tell you, I've never given money to the collective. I could get into a deep discussion about why, but the collective was absolutely important. When Zach Edey and Matt Painter discussed, do you want to come back? Would you rather go to the NBA? That sort of thing. And then the collective said, we can find a way to make this work. And Purdue's business-savvy people went and did their thing. They secured Zach Edey. That's a big deal. I don't know who else was secured. There's lots of rumors about Braden Smith being the target or the love interest for Gonzaga and Mark Few. But I haven't heard a story about Purdue securing him and the collective securing him. But I'm sure some of that happened. So as we look ahead, I think the big thing we ought to do is, all kidding aside, continue the philosophy that Matt Painter helped us adopt, which is don't deny the past. Don't deny what led up to this. If you get a hard time on the internet, understand that You're the alum or the fan of a program that has struggled in the NCAA tournament to get there, to get over the hump, to get to the Final Four. And the next thing is you can also say, we haven't won that national title yet, and you can wear it. The next part of it is you can also remind whoever's talking that chances are their team hasn't done it either in the recent past. Most of the trash talk I'm hearing from is not from programs that have won a national title in the last, well, I'm trying to think. Because it's multiple fan bases. It's the same fan bases who are giving Purdue shit down the stretch you're hearing from again. The only one that really has legs to stand on is Michigan State. Now, is Tom Izzo on his way out and it doesn't have another big run in him? I don't know the answer to that yet either. This is something we're going to have to look back with on history in a couple years. But you can remind them who they are too. I think that's fair game. And you can say, there isn't one player on your team's roster who was born the last time you won a national championship. You can say that in most of these cases. Keep them honest. Keep them honest and stay honest yourself. I know social media isn't the place for that for most time, but staying honest is a good thing. Even keeping high character in the crap world of social media. All right, I'm going to take a look at some of your comments. I know there's not a ton of you on here live, but I wasn't really what this is about. I just want to get these thoughts off my chest and say thanks to Fairleigh Dickinson for putting the fire in the gut of so many of Purdue's players and coaches. Without that Fairleigh Dickinson loss, there is no tournament run this year, not to this extent. Without that Fairleigh Dickinson loss, perhaps we don't get to see Zach Edey win another national title. Without that Fairleigh Dickinson loss, we sure as hell don't get to watch that super enjoyable February leading into March, like Anish said, when things were just rolling and it felt like I don't want to see this end because I don't want to see this team go away. We kind of fell in love with this team because of the metal they were made of, the stuff that they showed. Pretty awesome, pretty special. And Fairleigh Dickinson, at least in part, is to blame for waking that up in many of these guys. And then the next step is, what does this do to these guys in their careers as they go forward? We don't know. Could be something really special, and I hope it is. Vincent Moster is the first one here, and he says, he brags about it. Adam P., hey, nice surprise. Yes, this was a surprise. Unannounced, no Twitter announcement, nothing. IC says, shout out to Dilbert. Is it this? Is it the glasses? Yeah, I guess. I got others to choose from, but I really like these. Ancient Astronaut says, hammer down. Andy Day says, thought the BS crew was on hiatus. Sure, kind of. But we never sleep. We never sleep. The BS crew never sleeps. We are actually in negotiations and talks for something kind of exciting. We'll see what happens. I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but we've been approached for a potential change, and I may dig into that one day. We'll see how it goes here, but kind of exciting stuff. But we'll see. I'm not going to tell too much yet. Need to be in verse says, totally agree with you. It's new territory. When the sadness of UConn loss wore off, turned into disbelief that Purdue actually made it to that far. Hopefully more great things to come. I mean, you guys saw me after the game. I was bummed that they didn't win, but I was happy they got there. And I that's not loser talk at all. That's just the talk of somebody who had been through the ringer like you had. Maybe I've been through a shorter time or longer time, but that was a special weekend, special day for me. Greg Mitchell says, interested in if we have a Europe-like summer trip coming up this year. And I am too, Greg, and I have not heard anything about that. If someone has in the comments, tell me about what Purdue's plans are this summer. I think that Europe-type trip would be super important for such a young team to get them on the same page. Let's not forget, even if Purdue's really talented and guys develop really quickly, the bonding of this team, the 23-24 team, was already, for the most part, it was already there, right? They'd done a lot of their bonding the previous year. So trips like that Europe trip do matter. I agree. Let's see. Need to be in verse says, Greg, I think they only do overseas trips one every 4 years. Could be wrong. Yeah, it's at least every 4 years, if not every 2. So it's not every year. But I don't know, like, the rules are so different now. Teams start practicing in 10 days from now, 12 days from now, they start legally practicing. It's a very different world than it used to be. So there's chance for teams to get better and to grow together. And Painter does good things with the training regimen and stuff like that. Lots of stuff that is team building, but nothing's quite like traveling with a team and competing with them, right? Lots of good things happen there. And I don't know there's also things that limit guys from getting on campus. And so how many of these young freshmen are on campus super early? These are all questions that are going to shape the way this team comes together and how quickly. Let's see. Ancient Astronaut says nothing but love, especially for Gillis. Yep, right on. John Younger says, what if he wins a title at Duke? He very well could win a title at Duke if he goes to Duke, because he's going to be on a team that is uber talented. And like I said, he is the part that team is missing. They know it too. They're looking at a guy, Malik Brown, I think, from Syracuse, is also a pretty tough guy, but he's not as tough as Gillis. They've got a very, very, very talented freshman that's going to be there, but they need toughness on that roster. Granted, Trapowski is gone from Duke, and that's losing a very, very jellyfish spined man and player. But I think Shire's got a bigger issue to figure out. He doesn't put toughness into his teams like Krzyzewski did, so maybe that's a culture changer for them. I got no problems with Gillis for doing what he's got to do, but damn it, I hate Duke. And I hope Duke's not worthy of him. So that's my thought. He's still a Boilermaker, though, regardless of what happens. Kevin in Albuquerque says, I think of Paint's statement on watching the UConn film. They run plays I plan to steal. He's thinking ahead. Yeah, and he said that before the game, and it got my attention. Then watching the game, I was like, yeah, there's a lot to learn here because they do things differently and they do them well. I agree. I think that's a really good point, and I don't think I addressed that after the game. Very good point. Thanks. Need to be in verse says, love this QuickCast. I keep thinking I agree with literally every point. Well, that's awesome. And you've been here all year. I think for the entire year you were here. And so that's probably part of the reason. But I want people like, not everybody agrees with me all the time that comes in here, and that's okay. Like I said, I want discussion. I think the internet doesn't have enough discussion, real discussion, when we disagree. It's a lot of bullshit arguments that happen. But so we need discussion even when we don't agree. But coming to a place where we're like-minded is also nice, and then we can get ready, get prepared, and go out to the world and fight a good fight. So let's see. Sorry, I get lost. Jeff said, I've never watched the end of that game. The FDU game, I think, is what you're talking about, not the UConn game, and I understand that. I can tell you, if you were watching the Handsome Hour when my son put it on the TV, that really bothered me, and I hadn't watched much of that game at all. That really got under my skin. Ben Kolodzinski says, gosh darn it, Ben. It's not fair to you. He's a pro, by the way. Says, powerful experience having the Boilers in the national spotlight. Hopefully, plenty more opportunities to come. Boiler up. Hammer down, Ben. And thanks for coming by and saying hi. Appreciate you all year. Greg Mitchell says, I don't feel that we've peaked. Painter just seems to learn more every year. And it's almost like he's getting exactly the recruits he wants. Boiler up. He's doing so much better job of going after guys that he thinks are a fit, more than just being a good player. He's going after character. He's going after family. There's an entire process. I think he's going through screening. I don't think you just get lucky this many times. I don't believe in that. And I think there's real skill in what he's doing and how he's fashioning the program and the storytelling he's doing to those parents. I've been saying this for a while. I think Painter, when he talks in press conferences, is often talking to moms and dads of those kids and telling him what really makes him tick and what he thinks about the state of college basketball and things like that. So it's not lucky. He's getting better. He's growing a ton, which is amazing as a guy who he's 51, 52 years old, I think Painter is, a couple years older than me. And I would love to get better at my craft as much as he's gotten better at his the last few years. Pretty incredible. Pretty awesome. But good point. Neither Beam Verse says, if Lance wasn't the best grad transfer, he was certainly the most beloved by the fan base. Absolutely. What's not to love? Andy in Colorado says, boiler up, good evening, everybody. Ted Berkey, the mercenary model will be less successful after the COVID year no longer exists. This is true, but the COVID year clearly never ends. If you're paying attention, there are guys commissioning for additional years all the time. It seems to never end. And I know this should be the last year affected by COVID. I will make you a bet that it's not. I will make you a bet that guys will still find a way to play longer because the NCAA is a pushover. So it's a shame. It's not supposed to be. I mean, the new version of college basketball is it's a pro feeder, and it's just a semi-pro league where some guys are professionals and some guys are semi-amateurs on the bench. But COVID era never ends. Greg Mitchell says, was Carl Landry a transfer? If so, gives Lance a run. Boy, I wish I could remember this off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it, Google. I think he was a transfer. But I know he wasn't a grad transfer. And so you're dealing with different things. The grad transfer is what the discussion is. All-time transfer discussion. I think Lance Jones is also in that. Jack Leonard 20-2. My good buddy says, I can't believe you teased us being approached by the underwear modeling place. What is that reference even, Jay? I don't know. That's Jay Money, in case you haven't learned this yet. Can't believe you teased us. You got to explain to me, Jay, what you're talking about. I'm sure this is a good joke. The problem that I have often with these comments is their reaction to something I said, and then you guys are saying them in the past, and I read them in the future. And I'm not. My brain is simple, so I apologize, Jay. Eddie in Colorado says, unfortunately, nobody was beating that UConn team this year. Absolutely not. Gentry BN says, what are your thoughts about Purdue defense next year? Seems likely a big drop-off without Edey. It'll be different, but I think it's going to be – I think Purdue's defense – well, Painter has shifted his focus on what he thinks of defense, and he's placed more – emphasis on offense. So the offense plays with better pace. The offense plays with first priority, and the defense has changed. He doesn't want teams wearing out on defense in a way that hurts the offensive production. I do think you're going to see a very different defense because Edey was such a good rim protector. But there are a lot of ways things can go. A lot of ways guys can grow up in this offseason. There's still a lot of possible movement, even with just days left in the transfer portal. We don't know exactly how this is gonna flesh out. So I'm gonna wait to make a decision on how I think it's gonna affect the defense. But I do think the on-ball defense with Lawyer and Smith will actually go up a little bit, and I think there's gonna be some guys that you're gonna see become incredible defenders. We saw a little hint of this with Heidi. I think Heidi could become just an absolute mother on defense because of his rare combination of athleticism, size, and strength. He's not going to get weaker. He already was put together pretty well, but that guy could be something that we haven't seen in a long time, which is a wing type player who's a stopper on defense. I mean, the closest we've had to that is probably Ray Davis, but he was more of I guess he was close to a wing, but he was really more of a guard. And then the next one, I think Colvin could become something special on defense. I know if my friend Ryan Bucher is listening or watching, he is clutching his pearls right now. But I think Colvin could become something really, really noteworthy on defense because of the jump he made in about a month of hard lessons of the bench by Painter. We'll see what happens. Matt Keller says, since we're going to be running a different offense, do you think Berg will play more and be more dimensional and shoot threes? This is an interesting question because Berg has the ability to pop out and shoot threes. Painter has clearly said, if I've got a guy that's this efficient on offense, I don't want him popping out and shooting threes. There's not another Zach Edey coming in. There's not another Zach Edey on this roster. Berg is not going to sprout wings and become Zach Edey in the... It's not limited time, right? You've got 3 years of eligibility left, according to the NCAA rules. He's got some time to develop, but at the same time, he doesn't have that chip on his shoulder that Edey had as a freshman. Edey already felt disrespected as a freshman and was trying to rip the rim off of the acrylic every time he got the ball. So he's not going to be that way. Jacobson is not going to be that way either. And both those guys have a similarity in that they can pop out to 22 feet and bomb a little bit. What does Painter and Thompson and company do with that? We'll see. I think it's a good question. I don't think we know the answer yet. It's a good question, though. Adam P. says, don't want to speak for others, but prior to this year, I hadn't started to think that maybe Purdue would be a team that plays well in regular season, but just is not suited for a Final Four run. This year helped. And I think that it's one of those things where it makes guys in the program believe. It makes the fan base believe. This is my whole point about what does this do in the long run to the fan base, to the players. We've all tasted a little that sweet nectar. What do? How much pressure do we put on ourselves to try to get Purdue back? And how much pressure do we put on the program? What's the expectation? Are we just happy and content? I don't know. Seems like a different fan base than it was a decade ago, where there was a lot of contentment in Purdue fans just saying kind of the idea, well, I hope everybody just has fun. It's a lot different now. The younger Purdue fan wants to see Purdue succeed mightily in the postseason. That's a little bit different than the old Purdue fan. Nothing against that old Purdue fan. They're important, and they're, like I said, we got to lean on them and learn from them. But at the same time, I like some of the aggression we see from some of the younger fans too. Let's see. Ted Berge says, can only have a summer trip every 4 years. So I think, Ted, what he's saying is that by NCAA rules, what's that mean anyway, Ted? What's that all about? I'm sure you're right. If you're saying it, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're confidently speaking. But NCAA rules are kind of made to be pushed around and molded like clay anymore. What a stupid era. Adam P. says, reframe our expectations. Yep, and I think that does that. Jay said this last year. Becoming a number one team reframes your expectations within a season. It raises expectations. It makes everybody think, oh, we should do better in the postseason. So to not do better year after year after year was tough, right? You had 2 years in a row where you got to number one and then you fizzled in the tournament a little bit early or very early. This year, they played to seed and they got to the championship. That's a big deal. Gentry BN reaffirms what Berkey said. Purdue isn't allowed another European trip. I think it's every 4 years. And I don't know what other possibilities there are for team building in that way. I really don't know. But this is an era of creativity. And one thing we've seen from Purdue's athletic department, if there's a way to do something a little better, a little different within the framework of the rules, Babinski and company have found a way to do it. And Painter has found a way to do it. So I have faith in these guys being really good about the team building. So I think they can do big things and will do big things to help the team grow together quickly. Ed Albanese, the king of gummy bears, says, just joining, what's going on? Boiler's doing good. I think everybody's doing great. I'm glad you're here, Ed. Josh Deach says, just wanted to say that I saw Hurley's interview on Dan Patrick today, and I still can't stand the guy. Nothing has changed in the past. First-class douchebag. I don't think you're going to see many Boilermakers argue. I even don't think if you could get an honest UConn fan for 15 minutes by themselves that they wouldn't say, yeah, he's a little bit of a douchebag, but he's our douchebag. And I think there's some of that happens with fans, right? I think a lot of that happens with fans, actually. So good luck finding an honest UConn fan, because UConn is a different animal in that they've had, championship after championship after championship. So you have a ton of people that don't have any connection to the university other than ESPN has brainwashed them into loving UConn. That's a different fan base. I don't care if it's Ohio State football or North Carolina basketball. Schools that have championships that are on national TV all the time, they start picking up fans that are just fans for fans' sake, and they look at it like pro sports. That's a different animal, in my opinion. So Karen Gerlach says, who are the big score makers next year? And hate Duke too, but love Mason. I'm with you. So hope the best of the world for him. Ethan to ND. I would love to see Ethan in Notre Dame. I also thought Pitt was a possibility because it's close to home. Somebody said Duquesne because it's close to home. Mason could be Oklahoma State or Notre Dame, and I'd be really, really happy and content for him, all that stuff. Duke, man, that'd be tough for me. Come on, Mason. You know we're boys. Don't go to Duke. I'm just kidding. Do what's best for you, brother. So who are the big score makers next year? Who are the scorers of the team? There's a lot of guys that can score, Karen. Tons of guys that can score. Catchings is a bucket. The dude can shoot. He's got a silky jumper and he can attack the rim. So I'd put Catchings right there. He's gonna get a lot of people's attention. It'll be interesting to see what Colvin and Catchings do in practice together, because I think they've got similar temperaments, similar ideas of they're both confident in their abilities, and we'll see what they do together, how they build each other up, if you will, because they're going to compete hard. Heidi can score. Smith, we discount some things. Because Purdue had Zach Edey, we forget that Braden Smith is a mother of a basketball player. I think we dismiss it often. The reason Braden Smith's so important to Purdue is his ability to do so many things and his ability to stir the drink. He understands where everybody is all the time, and then he can score. That pull-up jumper from the elbow is simply deadly. And on top of that, he attacks the hoop when he sees it's time to attack. He sees the court extremely, extremely well. So Smith can be a guy that his scoring can go next level. Fletch Lawyer took an 11% increase in three-point shooting this year. You may not realize that, but that's a massive jump. And it comes from taking smarter shots and just being able to be in the position to score late in the game, because physically he could take a little bit more of a beating. Now, if he can use this UConn model, watch those guys, how physically dominant they were, and say, I need to get a little bit stronger in the offseason. I'll put on some 7 to 10 pounds of muscle, and then on top of that, keep that jumper solid. Fletch Lawyer could be a scorer. TKR. There are so many weapons on this team. TKR, we forget about how good of an offensive player he was in high school and then how good he was at times this year. But you don't have to look back very far. Look in the NCAA tournament. He scored, 18 and 8 versus that Utah State, right? That's a hell of a big stage, a guy rising to the occasion because they were trying to take Edey away, and he took advantage. In Europe last year, he scored pretty well as well. Plus, he's a guy, we asked the question about Berg earlier, about popping out and shooting threes. That's a guy that's confident shooting threes, and he'll get even better at that. A lot of options. Good question. Matt Keller says, what's up, Mr. Gummy Bear? Yeah, give Ed his props. It's very, very good. Matt Keller answers Karen Gerlach. Jason D says, if anyone hasn't watched yet, the Ray Davis podcast with PJ is phenomenal. Agreed. It's very, very good. They're both awesome. A lot of honesty there, which is really, really cool. It's cool to see Ray unvarnished, not like he's on the Big Ten Network, but just kind of in his element. I suggest it. I agree. A lot of cool stuff from the coaching perspective from PJ. And PJ is a mini painter. We're in good hands. Yeah, PJ's future is extremely bright. Extremely bright. He comes from good stuff, too. I love PJ Thompson. Ed Albany says, haha, all good, just enjoying the success and recovering emotionally from the loss. Bo Mowry, I don't know that name. This is good. It's going to hurt to see Gillis in another uniform. Agree, Bo. Agree. And if I read from you earlier this year, I apologize for not remembering, but thanks for being on here. T. Crispy 32 says, this is Dilbert. Thanks for the shout out. Also, Purdue news of Konzo picking up Carson Cunningham as assistant at Missouri State. Yeah, that's a big deal. Who is the other? There's another ex-Purdue player. Dang it, brain. He has two. So you've got Carson Cunningham on Zoe's bench and dag nabbit, another ex-Purdue player who was he coaching at Utah State? Yeah, he was coaching at Utah State this year, and Martin smartly picked him up. So pretty cool. Jack Laren 22 says, you teased us being approached and a potential partnership. I can explain later with small words. Thank you. Yeah, no, I teased you guys about that, and you know how that works, Jay. You actually, you know about You know about the teas, so you don't need to do that. Don't tell them anymore. Ed Albany says, do we know where we are going? Any hints so far? Do you know where they are going? Any hints? What? I don't know what's going on with that. Sorry. I don't know what that reference is. Jay Westfall says, we're hammering in Houston. What am I missing? Hammering in Houston. Tag nabbit. I'm sorry, I can't catch it. Mo P says, happy for Gillis and Morton. Hopefully they find a place where they can get meaningful minutes. Wondering who of the upcoming 6 freshman redshirt. Well, there's a little bit more of this story too right now. It's not just that the upcoming 6 right now might need a redshirt. There may be one that they can't afford to put on scholarship. So either I'll have to go to a prep academy for a year or go back on the market and get picked up by somebody, sadly. I think it'll all work out, but we're running out of time. I think it's April 30th when the portal closes. So we'll see what happens there. But right now, Purdue is 1 over with everybody sticking where they are if there's no additional departures. So that's of note. We got to keep an eye on that. Ed Albany says, I'm looking forward to Bird getting some more playing time, and he will. Dick Stillwagon says, yes, more live shows. You're welcome, Dick. Glad you're here. Paul and Bo Outdoors says, who's going to San Diego in November? Who's going to San Diego in November? Explain to me what that means. I'm way out of this right now. What am I drinking tonight? Matt Keller asks. I'm drinking the Senator. My bottle is almost gone. This is a rye. I think it's a 6-year-old rye. It's fantastic. Greg Mitchell says, kind of hoping UConn turns into. Oh, San Diego must be. That's a preseason tournament. That must be what that is. I don't ever know these things, and I'm kind of. I look one step at a time. Right now, I'm already starting to switch to football mode. I missed out on being at AJ's. I don't know, did I explain that? I don't think I did. So the reason I didn't do a podcast from AJ's, I think I just said I wasn't able to go. I've got a really bad back that flares up every now and again. I think it's part of the joy of being 48 years old. But I've had a bad back for about 12 years, 10 years. And every now and again, I go into spasms and I'm shot. And that was one of those mornings I couldn't do anything. And so I had to change my plans. I feel bad. I got to get up there, and I want to record a show in Adam's Fine Establishment if he'll have me again. So I plan on doing it, but back spasms are the worst. Let's see. Greg Mitchell says, kind of hoping UConn turns into IU, a formerly successful program with fans who live in a fantasy land, and their team is still good. Can't think of many more deserving fan bases. Yeah, it's going to be a while. It'll be either Hurley leaving or NCAA issues that'll crush that thing, and it's going to be a while. I was hoping Kentucky would snipe him. They tried and couldn't get done. It's weird for me rooting for Kentucky to get a coach like that, but for some reason it just felt like I could deal with it a little bit better. Maybe it's because spending time in Phoenix with him was not the best thing. So there were some good UConn fans. Like I said, just most of them were tough. Matt Keller says, hasn't even been a week off, and he's back in the gym. He's talking about Smith. We're blessed to have this guy, no doubt. Okabu13 says, have you seen TKR's new haircut? Yes, I have, and I remarked about it on Twitter. TKR's haircut is awesome. I mean, the dude looks aerodynamic. It's wild because it's such a change. And it's funny because the last time you saw him with hair that short, he didn't look as chiseled as he does now because it was back in high school. Dude looks sharp. He got a fade. Looks sharp. Big difference. Brian T says, happy to see a new QuickCast. I was late, but we'll rewatch. Excellent. Thanks for being here, Brian. Thanks for still being here. That's not going anywhere. That's not going anywhere, brother. Yes, T Crispy 32 helping me in my bad brain. Terrence Crump is the other assistant that Conzo hired. Thank you very much, Terrence Crump, ex point guard, right? From back in the that goes. I mean, it was nice that Crump was there, but that goes back into the Nate Manoy days, right? I think my brain's telling me that's similar team, same era. Maybe he was just after Manoy, but there were some kind of dark days there. Icy says, where can we see TKR's new haircut? If you want to go, you can go through my the Boiled Sports Twitter feed, and I remark about it. But it's been a while, and not a lot of long content on the BS Twitter feed right now, but there's some pithy stuff. So I don't know where else to direct you other than, go to the Boiler Ball Instagram account. They had I can tell you where it was. They had a kind of a meet and greet at Rorman, if I'm thinking correctly, where you had Morton Smith, TKR. I think that's it. I think it was Morton Smith and TKR. And TKR displayed his new haircut, his new look. Greg Mitchell says, Cam Heidi, new t-shirt on Purdue NIL page is freaking awesome. Yeah, it says, Slam Heidi, right? So that's fun. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff out there. A lot of t-shirts, even outside of our good friends, Homefield. A lot of good stuff on the market right now. If you're anything like a niche, you're breaking the bank and you're finding everything you get your hands on that's Final Four related. But some of that stuff, man, I don't love all of it. I got the Networthy shirt. You guys saw it on a podcast because I wanted to have something that was on court. But some of that stuff I don't love. But that's not a Final Four base shirt. It's just a cool shirt. Adam P says, anyone else finding themselves pulling for anyone that plays Tennessee, even if it were Duke, Kentucky, IU, Illinois, anyone? Within reason there. I think that list is going to would test my theory there. It would test your theory. Boy, there's some unlikable programs in there, so it's tough to agree completely with. Well, this is a nice quick cast, a nice tidy 51 minutes so far, and I think that's it. I do appreciate all you tuning in. Look at you guys showing up with these live views. Love the fact that we're here together and talking a little bit about this, even the off season. There's plenty of interesting stuff to think about. The hard thing I have always when football season rolls around and off season rolls around specifically is I try not to just add conjecture of guessing what the football team's going to look like based on what I'm hearing secondhand, because it's not really, it's as worthless as a spring game. Spring games are fun. They gotta say, okay, let's turn the page, let's get to football. But at the same time, you don't learn anything from a spring game with certain rules in place, like no tackling outside of the hash marks. For a defensive, tough, nose-minded team like Purdue, tough, defensively tooled up team, you don't see much of that defense in that sort of forum other than, okay, we're seeing some thud speed stuff. I don't like to just guess is what I'm saying. And I know that's not big in this era of clickbait. Maybe I should learn to do that. Maybe I should learn to put my neck out a little bit and guess a little bit more, but I'm not real comfortable doing it yet. Well, no, who knows? Maybe I'll experiment and try it out. Let's see. Yeah, Brian T says, not ready yet for football, still basking in basketball glow. Yeah, enjoy it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But football's coming. The Masters should start switching your mind for me. It's the Masters and IndyCar. That's what does it. And then I start going, okay, let's after about the second street course in IndyCar, I start saying enough already. I'm ready for football because I love IndyCar. I love the month of May in Indianapolis. But after a street course or two, I'm like, man, this sucks. This is not Purdue football or basketball, so I'm ready to move on. Karen Gerlach says, hopefully the lawyer gets in the weight room, nutrition program, and TKR looks buff in the new cut. TKR will continue to get stronger, too. That's another thing. I think this dude, like I keep saying, his cerebral nature and his different personality are such a good fit for Painter and Purdue. We haven't seen where he can go and what he can be at Purdue. And I think we will soon. And that's it for me tonight. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. Hope it gave something for you to think about. I had run this concept by a couple other Purdue alums, and I wasn't getting any disagreement at all. Thanks to FDU. Thanks for putting Purdue in a place where mentally they became something new, where they became stronger, where they went to the next level. Thanks to Zach Edey for allowing that FDU loss to brew and become something that was a drive to a guy that was already driven. And Zach Edey further, thanks for teaching the young guys what it looks like to go to the next level. PJ Thompson talks about that in that Ray Davis discussion, and that is worth hearing about in itself. PJ Thompson is very complimentary, of course, of Edey, but he talks about Edey's ability to go to even a higher level, already coming from the highest level. Pretty incredible stuff. God bless you. Hammer down. Talk to you soon. I don't know when that'll be, but talk to you soon. We'll see you.